Hi everyone, Ravi this side. Welcome to EnggAdda. So today I'm going to create a Spring Boot project which is reactive in nature, and we'll perform the basic create, read, update and delete operations there, and we are using a reactive MongoDB database. So this is a reactive Spring Boot project which have the CRUD operation in it, and the database that we are using is reactive MongoDB. So let me go to the IntelliJ and let me create this application. So let me go to the file and new, and let me try to create it. So let me name it like reactive spring boot, reactive spring boot CRUD with reactive MongoDB. Okay. So yeah, let me go next. Let me include some starter dependency like Lombok, and for the web dependency we are using Spring Reactive Web, and for the database I'm going to use the reactive MongoDB. So let me go to the nosql, come down, and here you can see there is a MongoDB and the other one is the reactive MongoDB. So I'm selecting this. So let's get create this project. Let me open in a new tab. It will take few seconds to configure and download the starter dependency that we have included. So let it be done, and then one thing I just want to tell you that you should be having the Studio 3T installed on your machine, and MongoDB should be there on your local machine installed. So these two prerequisite for this course. Okay, and I already have a video on my YouTube channel. You can go there and you can see how we can install the how we can install the MongoDB and the Studio 3T, and how we can connect both of them. So you can see this is the video. If you want, I can bring the link of this video in the description, so from there you can access it. So let me go to the IntelliJ. Now let me go to the project. I think it is configured, so let me go to the source. Let me go to the main, open the Java, and let me create couple of packages here. So I'm going to create entity. Okay, let me create service. First of all, let me create the repo, service and controller. So let's say it's service, and then let me create the controller here. So controller. Now coming to the entity, I'm just trying to create a user entity. Okay, and we'll try to perform all the create, read and update operation on the user entity. So let me try to annotate with the all argument and no argument and data for the getter and setter to string. Now coming to the database, let me create a collection for this. So for that we need a document annotation, and here what you can pass the collection name. So let's say it's a user collection. Okay, so let me name it like a user collection. Now coming to the user, let me create couple of instance here. So let's say I'm going to create the user ID which is of integer type, and let me create the name of user and address of user. So let's say it's a name, and let me go for the address of the user. So let's say private string address. So I'm just keeping these three instances now. Now coming to the repository, let me create the user repository here. So it is a interface user repo. Okay, and this should be extending the this should be extending the MongoDB repository. We are not using JPA here, we are using the reactive MongoDB. So it should be extending reactive MongoDB repository, and let me here we need to pass this two argument. One is the entity and another is the type of ID of that particular entity. So the entity name is user, and the type of ID of the user entity is integer. So let me import this user entity here in this class, and let me provide the type of that, so it is integer. So we are done with the creation of user repository. Now coming to the service, let me try to create a service class called user service. Okay, and let me try to annotate this class as at the rate service, because this is the service class, so all the service beans will be created with this. So now coming to here, we need the user repository methods. So with the help of Reactive MongoDB repository, there are a couple of methods that they provide. So we will be using that to create our CRUD operations here. Now, so for that, what we'll need, we need the instance of the user repository. So for that, I'm just auto wiring the user repository here. So let me auto wire that. So it's a private user repo and user repository. Now let me create the couple of methods. So let's say I'm going to create the read method first. So I will be getting out the user object from the database based upon the ID. So let's say it's a get user from DB, something like that, by ID. Okay, by ID. Okay, let me pass here the ID, and then what I will do, I will try to uh, let's say I'm passing the ID, and based upon this ID, what we'll do, we'll try to get the user object from the database. Here the return type should be mono. So in the reactive, when the single entity is returned, or where we are using or dealing with the single entity, then we are using mono here. So let me pass the user here. Okay, let me import the user class in this class. Okay, and the mono also. Okay, so now coming to the implementation, let me use this user repository and then use the find by ID method of the Reactive MongoDB repository. So here I need to pass this ID, and let me pass this ID. So what it will do, it will try to find out the user record with on the basis of the ID that we are passing from the database, and then it will simply return it. Now coming to the other method, let me create the method to find out all the users from the database. So for that, the return type should be flux. So let me try to name the method like find all, and let me remove this argument. Okay, and let me try to change the return type also. So let's say it is flux. Let me import the flux here, and now there is a method called find all, so I'm using that and simply returning it. Now coming to the other method, let me create, update, and insert and delete. So let me do control J. Okay, so now coming, we have created the, okay, we have created this get by ID and find all. We need to create the other three method, which is update. So let me change the name of this method first of all, update. Okay, now coming to insert, and then the third one is delete. So simply I just naming it. So let me we will be updating the user record from the database. How we can update that? So first of all, we need to find out the particular user that we are going to update. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm passing the ID of that particular user. Based upon this ID, we'll find out the user from the database, and then what we'll do, we'll try to update it. So let me, yeah, this is the one, and its return type should be mono. So let me change it to the mono, and here coming here, let me try to what I need to do. Let me try to see. So what I need to do here, we need to find out the user first. So find by ID. Based upon the ID, we are finding the user from the database, and what we are doing, we are just calling the map here. So we just fetch out the user from the database. Now what we are doing, we are calling map, and here it is asking for the functional interface. So what we are doing, we are just providing a functional interface. Okay, based upon that, what we are doing, we are just setting up the each attribute of the user that we are finding out from the database with the response that we are sending. So here what we need to do, one additional argument we need to pass, which is a user. Okay, so this argument will be coming from the request, uh, from the client or from the postman that we will send, and based upon that we'll set the user, okay, that we find out from the database. So so let me set the name of the user. I'm not setting the ID, I'm just setting the name and address. And from where we are fetching that, we are fetching from the user. So user.getName, and we are setting it. Similarly, for the address also we need to do that. So let me set the address here, set address, and from where we'll get the address, from the user that we are passing as a uh, response or request. Now we need to return this, and then what we'll need to do, we just flat map this thing. So now coming here, let me see from where the map is coming. Okay, till here. Now what we need to do, we simply need to do a flat map, and then we'll save this thing into the database. So what we are doing, I will just explain you each thing. So what we are doing, we are just finding out the data from the database, and then we are updating those things. And then what we are doing, we are just saving it back to the database. So for that we need to call the save, and here what we need to pass this argument, and we are simply returning it. So we are finding out the record from the database based upon the ID, and based upon this response we are setting up the attributes of the record, and then we are simply saving it out and then simply returning it. Coming to the insert, let me try to perform the insert here. So there is a method called, let's say it's a save, and we need to pass the reference here. So let me first of all let me provide the user reference, which will pass from the client or the postman, and then that will directly come here and it will save it. And let me change the return type to mono. Okay, so we are done. Now coming to the delete, let me first change the return type to mono, and here what we need to do, we directly need to call the delete method, and delete by ID also there. Let me try to pass the ID, and we'll, with the help of the ID, we'll find out the user record, and then we'll delete that particular user record. So let me pass it out. So here the method is delete by ID, something like that. Delete by ID, yeah. And make delete Java. Okay. So it should be returning void here. So it is not returning the user. So this is about the implementation of this CRUD methods. Now coming to the controller, let me create the user controller here. So it's a user controller. Okay, and let me annotate this class with the annotation at the rate rest controller, so that we can map all the APIs here. Okay, and let me create the request mapping for the class level mapping. So let's say it's API, and coming here I'm just going to create all the APIs here. Okay, so for that let me create the get API first. So okay, let me create the method here, get user by ID. Okay, and its return type should be mono. Okay, and we are passing the user here. Okay, now let me import the mono also, and let's say it's a public. Okay, and here what we are passing the ID. And in the get mapping, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do some mapping. So let's say it's a user. Okay, and then we are passing out the ID here. Let me, I have increased the font size so that you can see it better. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create this get mapping. So let me try to pass the ID here, and then with the help of user service, what we need to do, we need to call the user service implemented method. So let me auto wire the user service here. So let's say private user service. Okay, so with the help of this instance, what we'll do, we'll try to call each method. So let me, this is the find one. So get user from db by id. Okay, and then I will pass the id here. So we are done. Now what we need to do, we simply return it. So we are done with the get mapping implementation. Now coming to the get all, let me try to create a get mapping. So let's say I'm annotating this with, sorry, I'm mapping this with find all, and then its return type should be flux. So I'm just passing the flux here. Let me import the flux. So okay, what it is happening. So let me import the flux here. So we can see we have imported the flux. Now coming to the flux, we are not passing anything here. So let me remove this. Now with the help of the user service, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to call the find all method that we have created in the user service. Okay, so we are done with the creation of get mapping for find all. Now coming to the put post and delete mapping we need to do. So let me go for the put first. So let's say it is put mapping, and what we are doing, we are just passing out the, okay, let me import it. So we are here, we need to pass the user reference. Okay, sorry, here we are passing the user, and then we are passing the id as a path variable. So let me change here also, it should be path variable, so that we can pass this id in the form of url. So that is why we are using path variable here. So done with this. Now coming to the update, we are passing this id as a path variable. So let me try to use the path variable also. So let's say it's int id. Okay, now coming to the other request is, we need to pass the response, sorry, we need to pass the request as a request body. So whenever the client is passing the request, new request, which he want or she want to update the user record, so that should be annotated, that should be passed with the annotation called request body. So let me try to pass the user request here. So let's say it's user and user. Now coming to the method that we have created here is update, and we are passing the id and the new request. So let's say it's a user, and we are done now. It is returning the mono. So let me try to change it to mono and then return. Now we are done with the creation of these three. Now coming to the post and delete. So let me try to create the post mapping here, and then what I am going to do, let's say it is insert. The mapping for this is insert, and here we are passing, here we are returning the user request that we are inserting, and let me change the name. Here also I need to change the name, so let me change it to the find all. Okay, now coming to the put mapping, let me change it to update, and coming to the post mapping, let me change it to insert. Okay, and here in the insert, what we are passing only the user request. So in the form at the we are passing the user request as a request body, so that whenever the request come from the client, it is converted to the Java object and saved to the database. So let me call the insert method that we have created, and this pass the reference of the user here. So done. Now coming to the delete mapping, let me create delete mapping here. Coming here to this, let me try to pass the id. Based upon the id, what we are going to do, we are just deleting it. So I'm passing the id as a path variable. Okay, so let me try to call the delete one. So delete, and then we need to pass the id. So based upon the id, we'll find out it should be void. Okay, based upon the id, we'll find out the user request from the database, user record from the database, and then we'll delete it. So why we are getting this error? Okay, let me change to the user. Now let me see what the error it is showing us. Change the access modifier. Okay, it is mono of void, I think. because in the service implementation we saw that it was mono void. Okay, why it is coming? Let me go to the user service and then see it is mono of void. Okay, and let me go to the controller. Let me change it to delete. Okay, so we are done now. Because of this method, it was giving the error. So now we are done with the implementation of the APIs also for all the CRUD operation. Now coming to the configuration, let me go to the application properties file. Let me do some configuration for the database. So let's say we need to set the database name. So let's say the database is userdb. Okay, and let me say set the port and host. So spring port, host is localhost, and the port is the default port of the MongoDB, which is 27017. And let me make this application up on the server dot port 900 or 9001. So we are done with the configuration. Now let me run this application and then show you how it is behaving. So let me enable this. Now coming to the postman, we need to send the request first to insert the user into the database. So for that, let me open the Studio 3D so that I can show you how the DB creation is done and how the record insertion is done. So, and this is Studio 3DB connected to the MongoDB locally. So first it is open and then I will try to connect the local connection in the Studio 3D and then I will try to send the record from the postman. So you can see the Studio 3D is up. Now coming to the connection, I already have these two local connections, so I will connect one of them. So let me connect it. So you can see there is a couple of database that already there, bookstore, product DB, and the product store. Now our coming to our user entity, you can see we have named this collection as a user collection, and coming to the configuration, what database name we provided is userdb. So with the userdb database name, one database will be created here, and then inside that there is a user collection. So let me go to the postman. When I will send the request from the postman, then only it will happen. So what all the attributes was it was id, name, and address, I think. Yeah. So let me change the address. Let's say, let me remove it. Let's say it's Delhi. Okay, and the ID is 101. Now coming to the name, let's say it's Akash. Okay, so user Akash from Delhi and ID is 101. And let me come here. Let me do insert and then let me remove this rest. So this is the mapping and let me change it to the post. I will show you. Let me come to the user controller and then I will show you how we have mapped this. So for post mapping, first of all, for the whole class, the mapping is API, and then for the post mapping, it is insert. So come to the postman now. API post mapping is insert. Now let me change the port number, which is 9001. So we are good now. Let me send the request. You can see one request is inserted into the database, and we are able to see that request. So coming to the Studio 3D, let me refresh this whole connection. So you can see one user DB is created here. So let me go to this and you can see one user collection is also created. Let me try to open in a new tab, which is open IntelliCell, and there I will try to run a MongoDB query to find the record from the database. So it is loading. Okay, let it load, and then what I will do, I will try to run this command. So it will find out the user from the database. So you can see we have only one user. Okay, so let me try to insert couple of users here. So let's say the ID is 102, name is Rajan, and address is Noida, something like that. And then let me send it. It is inserted. Now coming to name, let me change the name to Rani, and let me change this address to Lucknow. Okay, and let me try to change the ID as well. Let's say it's 3, and let me send it. So now come to the Studio 33, and then let me try to run this command, and then you can see all 3 record is inserted. Okay, now let me try to check all the rest APIs that we have created. So coming to the insert, it is working fine. Now let me try to find out the user based upon the ID. So let me go to the postman, and let me try to change the URL here. So it is API slash user slash ID. So let's say the ID is 101. So okay, let me change the method type, which is get. So let me send it now. You can see we are able to find the user by ID 101. Similarly, you can go for 3, and let me send it. You can see it is able to find it. Now coming to the other APIs, which are find all, let me try to do that. So you can see we are able to find all the records that we have inserted into the database. Now coming to IntelliJ, let me see what all the other, for put mapping it is user, and then we are passing out the ID. So let me try to see how the put mapping, how the update is behaving. So let me change the method to put. Now here it is user, and then we need to pass the ID. So let's say it's user, and we need to pass the ID. So for 102, user 102, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to change the name. So name earlier it was Rajan. Now let me change it to Ram, and let me change the address to Lucknow, and let me send it. So you can see for 102 the name and address is updated. Now come to the database, and let me try to fire this command. So you can see for 102 name and address is updated. So update is also working fine. Now coming to the delete one, let me go here and then see. For delete, we need to pass this URL as delete and then ID. So I'm just going to delete the ID 103. So come to the postman. We need to pass the delete here and then ID. And let me change the name, method name, which is delete, and let me try to send it. So you can see we are not getting any return type here because we are returning void. Now coming to the database, let me check if the user ID 102 is deleted or not. So you can see we have only 2 records, 101, 103, and 102 is deleted. So every API is working fine. So we are done with the development of the CRUD application using the Reactive MongoDB, and this is the Reactive CRUD application in Spring Boot. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, and please subscribe the channel for more such content.